Who is St. James talking about in the second reading? He writes, "Come now, you rich people, weep and wail for the miseries that are coming to you." Who's he talking about here? 2 years ago in the Washington Post, an article said, there's a growing resentment that the richest people have somehow managed to get richer, while most working people are just 1 or 2 missed paychecks away from a food bank. Okay, so the point is there's a gap between rich and poor people that's unfair. Mr. Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP, he said, "We know that millionaires of this world are not paying their fair share." This cultural resentment is also illustrated by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, famous member of the Democratic Socialists of America. She wore this dress to a fundraiser, and the dress had written on it, "Tax the rich." And finally, I remember hearing some teenagers talk about wealthy people on Vancouver's west side, how their teenagers get everything for free. They don't have to work for anything. So is this the people that St. James is talking about? Are these the rich people? So today's homily, we're going to just look at 3 things, break it down. First of all, what St. James teaches, then what Jesus teaches about greed, and then how we as Christians should respond. So first, St. James, he condemns 4 behaviors of rich people first. He says to them, "You have laid up treasure for the last days." So he's being sarcastic here. What kind of treasure have they laid up for Judgment Day? Material possessions. Okay, they've hoarded wealth. Now this is going to be used against them in judgment. Second, "The wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out." In this time period, most people lived at the subsistence level. If you don't get paid, you don't eat. And they've been cheating the people working for them. 3, "You have lived on the earth in luxury and in pleasure." Okay, so a life of superficiality. They forget about God, they forget about other people. And 4, "You have condemned and murdered the righteous one who does not resist you." Earlier in the letter, St. James talked about how the rich people would bring poor people to court, and they would use their influence against the poor person to get a verdict that favored them, which of course is wrong. Now, notice in these 4 condemnations, St. James never condemns being rich in and of itself. So, for example, St. Joseph of Arimathea was rich, and he used that wealth to bury Jesus in a new tomb. 1 Timothy chapter 6, St. Paul tells rich people, don't be proud. Use your goods for other people, and then you will get a spiritual reward. And that's what saints like St. Helena, St. Elizabeth of Hungary, St. Thomas More, St. Catherine Drexel all did with their wealth. Okay, so being rich is not a sin. Of course, it carries with it many dangers. You could be tempted away from God, you think you're independent, you can be tempted away from concern for other people. But in and of itself, it is not wrong. However, the cultural resentment a lot of people are now feeling towards rich people in general, that is wrong. Because maybe rich people worked hard for that money. Maybe they earned it. And instead of criticizing a whole group of people in general, it would be better to do what St. James does. Criticize certain behaviors. So for example, if we're going to criticize wealthy people on Vancouver's west side, oh, their children get everything for free. Don't be angry with them. You should pity them. Because when you get everything for free, it makes you weak. You become spiritually weak. You become morally weak. And that leads us to the second part of the homily, what Jesus teaches. In Luke chapter 12, it says, "Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, 'Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me.' But he said to him, 'Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?' And he said to them, 'Take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions.'" I love this. I love this so much. Okay, so this man, he wants justice. Jesus, please tell my brother I want part of my inheritance. Jesus says, nope. Why not? Well, in this case, Jesus reveals there's something in this man's heart that isn't right. He actually doesn't want justice. He's actually greedy. So is it possible that this man, that inheritance was never meant for him in the first place. Maybe the inheritance already has been divided and he wants more than his fair share. Maybe he's already rich and he just wants more. And so what Jesus is saying is that sometimes we want fairness, but he's actually saying, no, that's a camouflage. You don't want fairness. You're greedy. Whoa. Sometimes what he's saying is all of us might be focused too much on abundance of possessions. In another parable, Jesus teaches life is not fair. Remember the parable of the talents? One guy gets 5, one guy gets 2, and one gets 1. And remember, talents in the Bible actually means money. So God gives money unequally, and it actually says because each person's ability is unequal. And so what is the point of that parable? Whatever you receive, you have a duty to invest it to glorify God. Jesus never taught that we should all have equal amount of material goods. St. Paul 2 times, he wrote about a situation among Thessalonian Christians. He said, hey, some of you are living off the charity of other Christians. And so he gave this very famous command. He said, if anyone will not work, let him not eat. Okay, so that command, that's not for elderly Christians who are retired. That's not for disabled Christians who can't work. It's for regular Christians who can work and they are choosing not to. That's not right. And so, a question for all of us, is it possible for poor people to be greedy? What do you think? I think so. Yeah, see, all people have a right to food, water, housing, and medical care. But even though you have a right to that, you should still contribute. You have a duty. And then after that, after those basic needs, whatever you get, you have to earn it. Because we're all sinful. It's possible for us to blame, let's say, rich people because we don't have what we want. It is possible that we can want things for free. And so this leads to the third part. How should we live as Christians? Do you know St. James is really talking about us? All of us are rich compared to the people he's writing to. All of us have more than we need. That's why we even have stuff we want. And actually, compared to most of the world, we're rich. And so it would be better, instead of comparing ourselves, let's say, wealthy Canadians, wait, no. We're rich. And it would be better, instead of doing that, we should say, Jesus, why did you already give me more than I need? Again, all of us have more than we need. And we should say, Lord, why? Why did you give me so much already? And second thing we should do as Christians, we should work for justice, and that includes economic justice. But it is wrong to aim for a world where everyone makes the same amount of money. That's actually unfair. It's wrong to aim for a world where everyone just gets everything equally, materially, because it's unjust. People are getting certain things for free. So see if you can be careful about what solution you support, especially the system, broadly speaking, socialism. This is becoming extremely popular among Canadian intellectuals, among young people. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church actually says this: the Church has rejected the totalitarian and atheistic ideologies associated in modern times with communism or socialism. I'll give you a little hint. Whenever the Church writes something official, like the Catechism, they are extremely hesitant about being specific because they don't want to get it wrong. It's very wise. It's a very cautious move. So when I actually never knew this statement until I just preparing this homily, I said, whoa, they're so specific. And that is because the history of socialism is so strong. The immoral history of socialism is so strong. Now, Pope Pius XI, he said, let us commend the just demands of people who support socialism. So concern for the poor, we want to give credit where credit is due. That is great. Stronger protection for workers, worker unions, good stuff. But socialism overall as an ideology goes much further than just concern for the poor. So because these philosophies, they're atheistic, there's no afterlife for them, right? So all the focus, we got to make this world as best we can right now. And then because they're materialistic, well, there's nothing spiritual, we got to focus on material goods, on the economy. So what happens is the government, aiming for a utopia, what do? They start controlling everything. They control the means of production, the means of distribution, and what they start doing is, well, let's make everything fair. We have to have equality, right? So they start redistributing wealth, and that's always wrong. In every country where socialism exists, because humans are sinful, right? There's still inequality. The government officials who start manipulating things, they always end up having more. Socialism actually used to really intrigue me. I was like, it makes kind of sense. Can you imagine a world where there's no poverty? If we just took all the money we have, just share it equally, no one would be in need. That makes a lot of sense. Now, you know what actually changed my mind on this? It was an Onion article. Who here reads The Onion? God bless you. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what The Onion is, it's like a satire newspaper. But it was very persuasive. So what actually happened is, so this is an article that says 3 college guys in their dorm room try to live out Marxism. So what they try to do is they say, okay, we're going to divide the chores equally, and then we're going to share the supplies equally. But within a week, the whole system starts breaking down because only one guy does the cooking. And he says, hey, you guys are supposed to clean the bathroom, you're not cleaning the bathroom. And so he starts cutting back his effort. He's like, wait a minute, if they're not doing their job and I'm working so hard, why should I do that? So he starts cooking worse. And then he starts hiding the peanut butter. Because he said, I bought this organic stuff and it's so expensive, so he hides it in his dresser drawer. And he says if Kirk wants to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, he can go to the corner store and buy the cheap Jif. So they all end up skipping class, smoking pot, and talking about politics. So I have to say today, it's kind of like a toss-up. Should I ask all of you to read Luke chapter 12 or an Onion article? So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'd recommend you read the Onion article because it's so persuasive. In this past April, the Liberal Party of Canada adopted a party resolution to give Canadians universal basic income to alleviate poverty. Whoa, sounds pretty good. So one commentator said $24,000 per person annually. Wow, it's kind of nice. And then you just dig deeper. Who's going to pay for all this? $464 billion. Where's this money coming from? And then there are deeper problems. Hang on, for some people, they're going to be like, 24,000 is good enough for me. Why should I work? So you get free money, even though you can work. Why? And then you will eventually become dependent on the government. You become, again, spiritually and morally weak. And you know what? Again, human nature. If we all get that money, some people are still going to complain. There's still going to be inequality. Some people still have more than others. And this is different than employment insurance. Employment insurance is wonderful because it helps someone who needs support in a time of need. But that's completely different than universal basic income. It says in Acts of the Apostles, "Now the company of those who believed were of one heart and soul. And no one said that any of the things which he possessed was his own, but they had everything in common. There was not anyone needy among them, for as many as were possessors of lands or houses sold them, and distribution was made to each as any had need." What is the difference between the early church and socialism? Just one word. Do you know what that word is? Voluntary. Yeah, so if Christians want to get together and share all their resources, God bless them. Out of love for Jesus, oh, praise God. If rich people want to donate more, that would be very good. But you can't force them. And you can't take that money away to redistribute it. So we should never blame rich people if we don't have everything we want, if material abundance is unequal. St. James teaches being rich is neutral. It does carry many temptations with it. So be very careful about aiming to become rich. But Jesus says greed, it's always a sin. So be even more careful about that.